Folks, good morning. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend some time with you this morning. I have the honor of introducing our moderator this morning. He's a relatively new friend of mine, but you ever meet somebody you think you've known him all your life? Certainly Glenn Hammer qualifies for that. We've had some incredible discussions over the course of these past 2 days. He comes to the Texas Association of Business after 14 years as CEO of the Arizona State Chamber of Commerce, where he led the state's business community to numerous public policy victories, helping Arizona have one of the country's most competitive economies. We know that he'll do the same thing here in Texas. He's had extraordinary experience in the area of education, taxation, legal, health care. He spent some time on legislative staffs in the past, so he's intimately familiar with how Congress works and the importance of advocacy and government relations. And I got to tell you, my sense is that Texas is unbelievably fortunate to have as their president and CEO of the Texas Association of Business, my friend Glenn Hammer. Good morning, Glenn.
Wayne, thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for your great leadership. This is an incredible event, and I want to thank Representative Clardy and Senator Nichols for hosting this event, as well as for Dustin Beavers for taking myself and my daughter Ella, who's with us here today, around. We have certainly felt welcomed. It's an honor to be in the great state of Texas. When I came from Arizona, I was actually misinformed. Texas is not a state, it's a country.
Yes.
And it's pretty clear when you take a look at this distinguished panel, we not only have good bipartisanship and it's bicameral, but we have great leadership from all around the state. And one of the issues we did work on in Arizona was immigration. As you can imagine, it's another border state, and from time to time, the issue rises up to the top of the charts. We're clearly at that point today. Arizona, like Texas, they have to deal with this situation in a way that most states don't, because we're a border state. So I'm going to introduce the panel and get right into this. By the way, I spent most of the reception yesterday trying to get someone else to handle this panel because this is a hot potato if there ever was one, and it's great. I think Wayne mentioned this is being broadcast on the World Wide Web and is going to repeat itself on cable television over the next couple of years. And I'm going to apologize in advance for very brief introductions so we could get right into this and hopefully leave some time for audience Q&A. So we have a couple of great senators, different parties with us here today. Senator Buckingham, who is a doctor, and I would agree with Representative Clardy. I do believe she's going to be our next land commissioner. She is a very strong legislator, very strong when it comes to business issues. So when you take a look at Texas, it's nice coming from Arizona, but the fact is Texas is far and away the #1 state for job creation in the world, not just in the country, and Senator Buckingham has played a major role in that. It's great to have Senator Blanco here with us today from El Paso, which I'm going to have the opportunity to visit in a couple of weeks. It's a border community, and we've heard earlier, I believe in the media panel, there's a difference in terms of how people perceive the border across the country and what's really going on the ground. So it's going to be great to get the senators' take on these issues. Representative Schaefer is here with us here today. Now, I believe it's accurate to say that, now again, I'm geographically challenged, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. he may be the only East Texas rep on the, or senator on this panel. So your perspective is going to be very important given that we're in Nacogdoches today. And it's great to have Representative Doc Anderson with us here as well. We have a great person from Waco, Jessica Addis, who is a big fan of yours, Representative.
Thank you.
And we always enjoy having you over at the Chamber. And I know you, well before I arrived in this great state, helped Texas Association of Business on our small business community. And I know you've done a lot of work for NFIB as well. And we're also thrilled to have Representative Morales here today from Eagle Pass, so also on the border. I also understand he runs a tortilla chip business, and I heard it's off the charts good. So welcome. Let's give our a great panel a nice. I originally come from New York, so it's not as welcoming. So I'm trying to get into the spirit of things. But we're just going to go right into it. A lot of debate, a lot of discussion over President Biden's plan to lift the Title 42 restrictions. And Title 42 it was something that was set up in the 1940s to basically, during public health emergencies, to allow the United States to reject anyone from entering our borders from either Mexico or Canada during a public health emergency. President Biden has said that he plans to lift that order by May 23rd. Anyone believe that's a bright idea? Well, that's a leading question, so I shouldn't ask it that way. That decision has received blowback on both sides of the aisle, and our senior senator, John Cornyn in particular, has been very vocal on the need to have a bipartisan fix to this. And there's a number of senators, including the senior senator from Arizona, Senator Sinema, who have also been very vocal in the need to make sure that Title 42 remains in place at least until there's the end of the public health emergency and that there's a plan in place. So I'm going to start with you, Senator Blanco, if that's okay, and just go straight down the line. You're on the border, so we'd love to have your take.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I think it's funny that they put the two border guys on the border of the panel. Great to be here. Beautiful community. So I support President Biden's decision to lift Title 42 because I think it's the humane thing to do. Many folks are coming from a variety of countries that are fleeing violence, are fleeing gang violence, are fleeing the Ukraine. And it's a sad situation, but I do think, and it's important to set the table as a Democrat in the room because I strongly believe that we need border security. It's how we do our border security is the difference. But ending Title 42, I think, is something that is important. It coincides or it's part of our constitutional rights, not only ours, but anyone who's coming and seeking asylum from another country. We protect those who are seeking safe places for themselves and their families. And I think it's a humane thing to do. I think one item that is important to note, that Title 8, which is the MPP, will continue to remain in place. What I do think is that because Title 42 will be lifted, I think it's the federal government's responsibility to provide border communities with the resources, because there will be an influx, and we're seeing it. There's no disagreement there. But the federal government has to step up and provide border communities with resources to deal with the refugee situation. But I think lifting Title 42 is the humane thing to do, and I think it demonstrates that our country is a welcoming country and will help people that are fleeing violence.
Senator.
Well, thank you, and it's also a joy for me to be here. Nacogdoches is a lovely community. We love East Texas, and it's always good to be here. I will very respectfully disagree with my colleague in the Senate. I think ending Title 42 is a complete disaster. I think that it has been a tool to help ensure the safety of our communities. I think the humanitarian and public health crisis that is the tidal wave of folks coming across the border is completely overwhelming our communities. It is unsafe. It is a complete disaster, and it will continue to be a complete disaster. And it's the perfect example of how the Biden administration is prioritizing non-citizens over our own citizens and not taking care of our own communities. And it's hopefully we get some changes politically that will bring some semblance and logic back into this process.
Representative.
We have had a massive surge of people across the Texas border since President Biden was elected. The primary tool that President Trump had put in place, the Remain in Mexico policy, was immediately removed by President Biden and the floodgates opened. And so what we're talking about with this removal of this little public health measure of removing Title 42 is simply going to create a surge upon a surge. It's almost like, well, somebody was just kind of riding the brake as they were driving 80 miles down the road, and we're just going to take the foot completely off the brake. The numbers are staggering. Just last month alone in the state of Texas, DPS reports over 100,000 people coming across the Texas border sector that they encountered. That does not include the people they call the gotaways that were observed on cameras through the drawbridge camera system, which Texas Rangers and Border Patrol tell me could be at least 1 to 2 times that number. So imagine perhaps 200,000 people coming across the Texas border last month. These communities are overwhelmed. Not every community on the border is the same. I've been to El Paso. I would feel safer walking in downtown El Paso than I would Austin, to be quite frank at times. But El Paso is not Eagle Pass. El Paso is not McAllen. El Paso is not Del Rio or McKinney County. I've been to some of these communities recently, and when you speak to the ranchers there, the people that live right on the border, have property right on the border, there's an air of desperation and frustration there that's palpable. So we've got a mess on our hands.
Thank you. Also, I'm very pleased to be in Nacogdoches, beautiful community, and we hope to spend the next couple of days to kind of enjoy that. Let me say also that the federal government's number one role is to protect the citizens of the United States. Our health of our citizens is paramount. The things that we're concerned about, Title 42 is just for COVID, but we are very concerned about plague, polio, drug-resistant TB, all these diseases that the United States has dealt with over the years. And whereas we all agree on we need immigration, we need controlled immigration, we need immigration where you check the health status. If not treat somebody, at least have some idea what's coming in. As a veterinarian, I can understand some of the medical aspects and what we have to deal with in that profession. But we definitely, the United States should live up to its role of protecting our citizens from some of these diseases. There's one thing, not in Texas, but actually in Nebraska, I heard on the radio coming down yesterday, that the Nebraska governor has said they've documented there was 40,000 COVID-positive individuals dropped off in Nebraska. I mean, this is just a recipe for disaster, but and everything comes through Texas here, and so I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of. We have to maintain this Title 42, and we have to make sure that we're protecting our citizens, our children, as well as those that want to come to the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Morales.
Right. First of all, thank you all for giving us an opportunity to come down here. This is the first time that I've been here. I fell in love with Nacogdoches immediately, and my wife and I, and so we plan on continuing to coming down here anytime that Representative Clardy will invite us. The second thing, I am still in my freshman year, the youngest member of the House or the Senate here. I also happen to represent 9 out of the 14 counties that share a border with Mexico. So if there's anybody on this panel probably that has heard the most from every one of those counties on the border, it's probably been me, and that's been dealing with it since we were basically elected into office. As a centrist Democrat, I serve the largest district in the state of Texas. It's bigger than 17 U.S. states. It starts in South Central Texas in Eagle Pass on the border and goes now all the way, after redistricting, into Northeast El Paso. And so I've lived all my life except for the 4 years that I was away at UT and the 3 years that I was at St. Mary's Law School. And by the way, that tortilla factory is just one of the hats of a number of hats that I have to wear. I'm an attorney by trade during the day, and so that's what I do. But let me tell you, I feel more in line with Senator Blanco. Title 42, I was grateful for the president to move it to May. The concerns that I was having from the National Guard, from the DPS, and from the local officials was just too much. They were expecting around 120,000 just in Eagle Pass and Del Rio alone. On the other side, on their sister cities, they were just waiting for Title 42 to end. So I'm glad that that was set back. You know, you see in history, you see the pictures of Ellis Island, people coming in on boats, and there's an orderly process. And I think that's the key. We need to invest in our ports. We need to invest in providing access, but not through the river. We're doing it the wrong way, and you know, people that are actually coming are exposing their lives, their children's lives. We're exposing our Border Patrol officers also, their lives, and we need to make sure that they go back. Our DPS troopers also, who are actively, day in and day out. There's probably not a week that's gone by where they haven't been saving people, multiple people, from the river. So we're doing it wrong, and it needs to change. And before we can do away with Title 42, we need to come up with an orderly plan. We've been in constant communication also with the White House, thanks to Senator Blanco's keen leadership in making sure that the White House, through the contacts that we have up there, are listening to us on the border. And it finally seems that it's sunk in that something needs to be done. I think that they've been much slower, especially when you're talking to somebody like Governor Abbott or DPS Trooper McCall that runs the DPS. I make one call, I send one text message because of concerns, for example, in Del Rio. We went from 1,000 to 5,000 from within hours to 7,000, and we ended up with 15,000 under the bridge in a matter of a day, day and a half. And so within 24 hours, the DPS had sent 100 additional troopers and vehicles out there to man the border. And I think that's the sort of effective response time that we are expecting from our government. As Dr. Anderson was saying, you know, we expect not only the state government but the federal government to protect us. And I frankly think that the federal government should be doing more, and it has not done enough.
Thank you. Yeah, some different answers, but a lot of good thoughts for question one. And I'm going to stick with Representative Morales as I change it a little bit. So I wanted to start with the border security because Title 42 is front and center, and it's something that I felt we needed to address right off the bat. But also during the reception and when I go across this great state, the number one issue I hear from employers is the need for workers. Mm-hmm. We have never had more workers employed in the state of Texas than ever in our history, one of the 4 states to return to the pre-pandemic job levels. We have the best and the brightest and the hardest working people all over the world that want to come here. How do we reconcile the issues of border security and the fact that employers, certainly including here in Nacogdoches, need workers? And Representative Morales, I'd love for you to start the conversation.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Yeah, and you're completely right. Everywhere I go, I'm big on the economy as a small business owner. You know, we have a number of residential, commercial, multifamily, and warehouse investments also, and so we see the need. We have doubled down on the border. We feel that's our community. We feel that the growth is there, but we are having a difficult problem with respect to jobs. I frankly would harken back to the days of the Bracero-type visas that would be issued, the farm worker visas. I think that the federal government should take immediate action. We know what Congress is doing. They're a stalemate. They use this immigration. You heard yesterday, if you were part of that panel, that it resonates with the Republican base whenever you talk about border security and immigration. And it almost seems that that's the only reason why they want to bring it up and continue to call it out on both sides, because they just want to drum up their base but not really do anything. We've needed effective immigration reform for over 30 years, and it hasn't taken place. And I frankly have taken the position that the governor of Texas should do more. As the 9th biggest economy in the world, if it were to be a country, we should have a say-so at what goes down in our southern border, but also on Mexico's southern border. And I'd much rather invest resources down there if it's going to stop the flow from Latin Americans, because that's the other thing. The misconception is not Mexicans are doing much better than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Mexicans are not crossing. It's these Latin Americans, Haitians, Cubans. Those are the folks. We're even seeing Ukrainian folks that are now coming across. And so we need to have some sort of pathway for them to come out of the shadows, to be part of the system, for employers not to feel like, okay, I'm going to end up losing my business or get a huge fine because these were the only people that are willing to do the hard work, and now I'm getting in trouble. And so I think that both the governor and whatever means, because at the federal level, not enough is being done, and we have this stalemate there in Congress, that we should take the lead. And we should move forward in making sure that we provide a form of way that these folks can be gainfully employed, not receiving any sort of state benefits, because they got to be paying into the system. We got to make it where it's worthwhile. A 5-7 year plan maybe, where they have to pay annual fines and stay in good standing. I mean, they're already model citizens to begin with. I did the math on the apprehensions. 348 gang members were apprehended in 2021. That represents 0.0003% of those total apprehensions. So some of this, yes, it's scary if you end up meeting one of those 348, right? But the reality is 90% or higher of the people that are coming up here just want to have a better life. And I always pose it to my much more conservative friends where we talk and debate. I pose it. You would be the first person, because of your family and the way your character is, you would be the first person that would want to come across to have a better life for your family. And this is basically over 90% what people that are crossing are wanting to do, just wanting to have a better life.
Doc?
Thank you. Yes, I very much agree. We all want a better life. Every last one of us want a better life for our children, for our relatives. The key is that it needs to be done legally, and that's something the federal government has to do. I mean, there's plenty of models like Australia, or some of the other countries that actually bring people in predicated on what their skills are, what their assets are, what they're going to be able to contribute to the society. And so we all are immigrants also, and so there definitely needs to be a way to bring people in an organized fashion where we check them on the health status that we were talking about previously with Title 42, but also on what their capabilities are so that they can contribute to society here and have some kind of organization so that people don't come across in the dead of night and then displace people that are already working, be it legal or illegal, or be it citizens or what have you, and disrupting the business climate. And so we definitely need to encourage immigration, and we need to try and do that as organized as possible, and that falls squarely on the shoulders of the federal government. And it's been totally ignored currently. And so, and with the criminality, that's if you have somebody, if your daughter is raped, or if your home is invaded, that's your kingdom. One time somebody is in your house, that's a tremendous burden on individuals, and that's happening more and more. These folks come over in these tremendous numbers, and if they can't find employment, well, they're going to provide for themselves and their families, and they're going to do things that they shouldn't do. So here again, it comes down to being an organized, positive way of bringing folks into the United States and filling the jobs we need filled. And so I think there's a lot more that can be done on a federal level.
Thank you. Representative Schaefer.
Who decides? Is it the American government? Is it the Texas government? Is it the federal immigration laws that we have pages and pages and pages of laws that are not being enforced? Who decides who comes into the United States? Right now, it's not the American government. Right now, it's not the Texas government. Right now, it is the cartels that control basically the Mexican side of the border. Operational control of that side of the border is not in the hands of the Mexican government. It's in the hands of cartels. It's a narco state, essentially. They're profiting off of all these people that come through. And yes, there are young women and girls that are being abused. Yes, there's enough fentanyl coming into the state of Texas to kill every man, woman, and child in the state of Texas. So I agree that we could get to a point where we have a conversation about an orderly way for someone to work. I've never met a Republican who doesn't think that we need workers. I've never met anybody who says that we don't need legal immigration. I've never met that person. But what we have is chaos right now. It's not good for us. It's not good for the people coming in. And when you look at who's coming in, yes, there's some family groups, some people who are fleeing certain things, but you also see a lot of working age adults, people in their late teens, early 20s, or into their 30s that are coming from Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador. Talk to any economist and ask them, what does it mean for a country when your working people leave? People who are healthy and strong enough to take a long journey to get here. And then we hand them a cell phone. We put them on a bus, ask them where they want to go, and we transport them into Texas and into the interior of the United States. How can Guatemala have economic health as a country if their people just leave? And right now, the only group that's making that decision is the cartels. The cartels are determining who comes across. If you go to the Del Rio area, the Border Patrol tells me, look, people from certain nationalities are being funneled. You see a lot of West Africans coming in through Del Rio because the cartels are directing West Africans they even have people who speak the language for them. Okay, so these decisions are being made by narco-terrorist organizations. They're not being made by the citizens of the United States. The Bracero program is something we should look at. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to have those conversations. But what we need before we get down to these finer points of immigration is let's bring security and restore peace and security to the people who live on the border, whose fences are being cut, whose doors are being rattled. When you have the district attorney down there, in, I believe, Kinney County, saying, we have female smugglers, that they're being caught red-handed, felony human trafficking. Female, but because there's no jail facility that has any room to house a female, they let her go immediately. We don't even have the resources right now to arrest and detain a human smuggler if it's a female. That's where we are. So we have got to bring some order to the chaos before we can get into the things where I think there's more agreement than we realize, but we need some order to the chaos.
And I want to echo and do a big amen, because I completely agree with you. You can't even start to have those conversations about how do we maybe change the visa program when you're just being flooded and overwhelmed. And it is so tough on our border communities. As I travel along the border and talk to folks a lot, I mean, they are just completely overwhelmed. The new restrictions that are coming down are only going to hurt our communities economically. And it is 100% the lures of the failed Biden administration's policies that are bringing those people here. And they're bringing them here enslaved to the cartels and to the most violent gangs in Texas. I mean, that is who is economically benefiting. When you have violent gang members and cartels that make more money on the humans that they are trafficking and smuggling across the border than they are on the drugs that they are producing, that is the kind of chaos that these policies, current policies, are bringing, and we have got to get complete operational control of our border before we can address the other issues.
Senator.
It's an economic question, so we should focus on supply and demand. Someone's taking those drugs on our side. Someone's hiring these folks when they come. When you look at the construction sites, it's majority immigrant. When you look at farms, majority immigrant. When you look at the hotels that we stayed on tonight, majority immigrant. Somebody's hiring them. Someone's taking the drugs. And it's sad. I do agree with a lot of what my Republican colleagues are saying. We've got a failed, broken immigration system. The federal government is not doing enough to provide border communities with resources to handle humanitarian effort. I would argue that the vast majority of those folks that are crossing the border are folks that are like my father-in-law or my mother-in-law that came to this country and are hardworking Americans now. I think that's the vast majority of the folks. You know, these are not people that are coming to take anything away from us. They're here to contribute. These are people that are fleeing countries, whether they're in Europe or Africa or Latin America, and we get them. Can you imagine the struggle that they go through for a better life, and we get them? That's a positive thing, and Ronald Reagan would agree with me had he been in the room. But I mean, the bottom line is the federal government has a failed immigration system. We need immigration reform. We have to have better border security, smarter border security, because the vast majority of folks and drugs that are coming across through our ports of entry, as Representative Morales had indicated. So we're focusing on the swath of desert in between ports of entry when the real issue is right on our ports of entry, and I think we need better technology. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about Texas's approach to border security, which I think is a very expensive way of doing it, and we're going to continue to spend in a way that I think is ineffective.
It seems that where there are some points of agreement, I haven't heard anyone here say that the border security situation is functional in the way that we would want from the United States government. I've also heard support for that there is a need for additional labor, and legal immigration is part of that. You're all state legislators. This has been something that the state has dealt with, as has been the case in Arizona, because of a broken system. So if each of you, if I could say that you were king or queen of immigration policy, how would you balance out security and labor issues in a way that would be functional? What are a couple of things that we can do there? Doc, I'll mix it up a little bit. Do you mind if I?
No, that's fine. I'd
we
say
get some Waco wisdom.
yes. Let's enforce existing laws. I mean, we just have to have. How can you have a system wherein somebody breaks the laws to come into our system, and then continues to break the laws as they're going forward? Eventually, the whole system starts to weaken, and so we need to enforce existing laws on the border and what have you. And let me say, just to divert just a little bit, the humanity of this whole thing, and we've kind of hinted at that a little bit, but these folks that are fleeing and trying to find a better life. I have a friend of mine in Brooks County that has been photo documenting the real face of illegal immigration.
Dr. Vickers.
Yes, absolutely. And what he has done is, and this is a terrible thing, but it's a reality. They'll have one of his dogs will bring up a finger, or bring up a hand, or bring up a foot, and he has to go out there and find where this individual has been as deceased and try and establish get some form of identity. The county is actually breaking the county, and many of these counties face that, trying to get those remains, bring them in, and get some kind of identification, DNA, and bury them. And he's documented this, and I mean, he has stacks and stacks and stacks of photos. And you can see the cartel influence, because some of these people are tied to trees. Some have been shot because they refuse to carry those packs of drugs any further, or what have you. And Nobody wants to see it. CNN, ABC, CBS, Fox, nobody wants to see those photo documentation of those deceased individuals. Where is the humanity in that? Everybody looks the other way. This current administration, I think, has blood on their hands on the federal level because they're just looking the other way. Nobody's paying attention to that, and those people just are deceased in the desert, men, women, and children. So I think that's a serious side of this that we don't often look at. But basically, to enforce the existing laws would be a darn good start, I think.
Representative Morales, and we'll go to you, Representative Schaefer.
So first of all, respectful disagreements here. Biden didn't come in and the immigration surge started. It was before that, and so I'd like to address that because it more than doubled under Trump also. So we just need to be fair, and I appreciate the fact that for the most part we've always been able to work on the things that we can work on and respectfully disagree on the things that we can't. The other thing is, I agree with my colleague Matt Schaefer's comments with respect to the border and the cartels, with a few exceptions. And that one exception is probably the state of Coahuila, which is right across Eagle Pass and Del Rio, which is also the place where I live. That is the safest state in all of Mexico right now. And there's pros and there's cons with it, because the migrants now know this also, and they're not from Mexico, remember, they're coming from other Latin American countries. And so they use the safest form of way so that they don't get in trouble also with the cartels. And that's why we ended up now with approximately what we're being told 120,000 in the state of Coahuila, because that is the safest place for them to kind of get channeled. Everywhere else, you do have these issues that my colleagues have commented, and I personally have heard of them myself. So I wanted to address that issue. And now on the security and labor and the functionality, I would stop crossings through the river immediately. Anybody that crosses through the river, then basically you'd be banned for 5 or 10 years. You could not even go through, even if you have the best asylum process. We need to have an orderly manner. The governor or the federal government should set up 3 or 4 land ports and equally divide them throughout the state of Texas, so that people can submit their application or go through that process, but also remain in Mexico or remain in their place of origin. I don't believe that coming through the river or just cutting the line should be a way. It's never been done that. Since elementary, we were told we needed to get in line and form a line and not cut lines, and I think that's the way that it should be done. I would also, we could use HB 9. As a Democrat, I was the only joint author of that bill. 2 other Democrat colleagues supported on the 3rd reading also, so I was happy for that. But this is what HB 9 is: a border security bill. We appropriated $1.8 billion for border security, and this is what my people in my district wanted. And so, yes, it did not align with the Democratic Party. But then again, we're not here for whether something is blue or red or something is conservative or liberal. We're here to make sure that you're voting your district, and this is what my district wanted. And in addition, we made sure that our border communities, because they have less resources, that we would ensure that they would get at least $1 million every year if they have reimbursable expenses. And you've seen places like Kenny County, which is one of the smallest counties, and they have already received $3.8 million in reimbursement, compared to Eagle Pass with $2 million and $2.5 million, I think, for Del Rio. So I would use that also. We have a unique situation right now where we've been trying for over 20 years. Did you know if you start in Del Rio and go all the way down on the river to Brownsville, the only place that a road does not connect is between Eagle Pass and Laredo, off on the River Vega. There's 18 miles that need to be paved to connect that. Border security wants it. The troopers want it. Heck, I want it, and everyone in Eagle Pass wants it. It would cut the time between 30 and 40 minutes to get from Eagle Pass to Laredo. How about using $15 million or so, what they're telling us that it'll cost, some of those funds, and make it a border security project so that we can provide additional access to border security and our troopers to make sure that we are protecting our borders.
Thank you. Representative Schaefer.
Done. Let's pave the road.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I agree. And, you know, it is important for us to listen to people that live on the border. And I learn a lot every time I talk to my colleagues from the border. They're talking, you know, if you live on the border, yes, there's a blessing when there's a big surge, and you like to see those black and whites out there. But also when you see that, you know, that balloon up in the air with a camera that's pointing in your backyard, you don't like that. You don't like all the surveillance in the community, okay? So it has an impact no matter what, which way you look at it. Yes, enforce the laws. There are millions of people who are in line right now to our immigration system, lawfully, legally waiting in line. And there are people who are now here with legal status who it took them years to get that legal status. And they were proud to follow the law and do it the right way. And we should honor that. There is a human cost to this. The bodies, you know, go to Brooks County, north of McAllen, the number of bodies that they have to pick up on the ranches, it's a lot, folks. I think if Texans in the Piney Woods, I mean, if you were having your fences cut every week, you'd be upset. If your cattle were getting out, if you were losing sheep, we don't do a lot of sheep out here, but if you were losing that livestock, you would be upset. If your wife had to start carrying a pistol at home. You know, we had testimony in the Homeland Security Committee from, we had 5 sheriffs from the border come and testify. And one of them said, you know, I live out in the country, and my wife will not go outside unless I'm at home because she does not feel secure. Okay, there are some real basic security issues for Texans that have been lost. What you have is a mass breach of the peace. In some cases, mass trespass on people's property.
Quality of life issue.
Quality of life issues. When you, in Kenny County, you talk to them, you know, if you've only got 5 EMS workers in your whole county, and some immigrants get involved in a high-speed chase, and there's a mass casualty event, and just one of your ordinary citizens has a heart attack, and there's no ambulance to come because all your EMS workers are dealing with the border security situation. There's only so many healthcare workers, only so many police officers who will live there. So if they're dealing with all these problems that are created by the border and this national policy, and you just want somebody to come take care of dad who fell over from a heart attack. Those are real issues. Those are real stories that we hear. And so I do think the state of Texas is going to have to look at this differently. To your point about President Trump, the border was not secure under President Trump. It was not, okay? It had been tamped down to some degree. That was measurable. He had put a damper on a lot of it. He did a lot of work on that. But Republicans who campaign saying we have secured the border are not shooting straight with you. If you have a Republican running for office saying we are securing the border, no, we're not. Are the things that we're doing with the National Guard and the DPS, are they making a difference? Yes. But have we diminished the overall flow? Not at all. In fact, it's increasing. And so we need to shoot straight with Texans about what's working, how our money's being spent. When they ask us for a road, let's give them a road. When they say we don't want a wall, but we'd rather have a barrier that actually helps us with erosion for the river, let's listen to the border community when they tell us. You know, I don't have all the answers, but we do know that there's a problem that's got to be addressed.
You know, it's really interesting because I'm living this situation right now because my daughter just married somebody from another country, and so we're actually going through the immigration and trying to get him to be able to come and live here and work in this country and support my daughter in the customs she's become used to. No, I'm teasing, but yeah, all the parents in the room get that, right? So you know, this idea that border security is at odds with what our business community needs for workers, I think they go hand in hand. You have a secure border. There is no doubt we need immigration reform. There's no doubt we need worker visas. They need to be contributing members. There need to be significant penalties if you've come here illegally. They need to be, like I said, contributing into society. But they go hand in hand. But what is not acceptable is a wave of people who are then victimized. When you're here illegally, you're just more vulnerable to bad things happening to you. And yes, there are people hiring them, but it's unlikely that they're getting health care they need. It's unlikely that they're getting paid a decent wage. It's, they're not getting fair treatment like we would want another human being to be treated. And so, again, until we secure our border, this flood that's happening is completely unacceptable. It's an absolute humanitarian crisis. And there's no reason we can't accomplish it all together and help our businesses get the workers that they need, create a reasonable process, and just it goes hand in hand. I think they're not at odds.
Thank you, Senator Blanco.
I agree. But when you look at where all the money is going, very little of it is going to drug intervention programs to stop the demand of drugs from coming across. There's very little money spent on finding sensible immigration reform to stop the folks from coming over. So I think as it relates to our state budget, because the federal government, well, it's the federal government, but when we're spending billions and billions and billions to no end, and I agree with Matt, because there is no end unless we start doing drug intervention, unless we start sensible immigration reform that works with our business community. But the money's not going there. The money is going to boots on the ground, barriers. We are paying for, Texas is now paying for a border wall. Like, don't get me wrong, as a veteran, I completely understand that strategic barriers are important. I support that. I don't think anyone here disagrees with that. But if we're taking a third century approach to a 21st century problem and building a physical barrier that's going to cost billions of dollars to construct and maintain, what's the saying? I'll show you an 11-foot ladder, right? Or they can dig holes, etc. It doesn't stop anything. So we need to be smart about how we're doing border security. I think we need a virtual wall. You got cameras, you got drones, you've got sensors, you've got infrared. There's a variety of ways, and these are all debates that we've had on the Senate floor, where there's technology available to us that doesn't require 10,000 National Guard members on the border, right? It doesn't require 1,500 DPS troopers that we're taking from East Texas, that we're taking from the Panhandle, that we're taking from some of the communities up north. We need to see how our Howies are doing, how many accidents we're having now, because everyone's going down to the border. So we're taking a very expensive approach and not focusing on the root causes of the magnet that's drawing these folks, the magnet that's drawing these drugs. So we have to have a balanced approach. All the money shouldn't just go to an old way of doing security, and that's having a physical presence. We also need good technology in our ports of entry, with making sure that we're doing X-rays and a variety of things that we have available to us to support the federal government on those ports of entry.
Well, I just want to say this has been a robust, polite, civil conversation. If our United States Congress adopted this approach, we would actually get a package that would work.
It's because we trained Cesar in the House before he got this.
What about Don?
Hey, I was not housebroken. I went straight to the Senate, to the good place. Skip the House.
I mean, that is the bottom line. Look, the answers are at this table. We all have good ideas. I think all of us, regardless of party, have said very important items. It's just doing it, right? And having the political will. Me as a Democrat to push back, they as Republicans to push back and find sensible solutions. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think we can make it happen.
I think it is a case of all of the above. I mean, all those things we mentioned need to be employed, but it needs to be a case where both the state and the federal government step up and live up to their responsibilities.
Well, I know that I learned a ton from this conversation. Please give the panel a well-deserved round of applause for their great conversation.